All right, sorry, time got away from me a little bit there. I trust you all got a chance to see the Dune trailer.
I took a peek.
Looks amazing. Kind of wish I could go see it in the theater at this point.
Tanner?
Okay, so go ahead and watch that later. I do want to get back to the fun part here. So at this point, we have our skeleton. We don't have our control rig just yet. We want to add IK to the legs, though, first. So what's IK? First of all, what does IK stand for? Let's start with that.
Inverse kinematics.
Inverse kinematics. So what does that actually mean? It's okay. So let's start with, so inverse kinematic, we have inverse kinematics and forward kinematics, so FK, IK. In the second class, or if you've ever worked with other rigs, a lot of times you'll see they have FK, IK switches so that you can switch back and forth. So what FK means, if I select this, if I want to move the hand, I have to move the shoulder, then I move the elbow, then I can move the hand around. If I have IK, and you don't have to do this right now, I'm just going to create an IK handle.
Hey, Phil.
Yes.
Quick question. So when I try to mirror, it
Okay.
says error line 0, too many arguments, expected 1, none 0.
You have to have only one joint selected at a time. You can't select like the clavicle and the thigh and mirror. So just select the clavicle and do it. Did that take care of it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So again, we'll walk through this slower. So I'm just going to add my IK handle here.
Oh, the
So now,
video is frozen for me.
What's that?
The video is frozen for me.
For anybody else?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was,
Yeah, I was like,
like, is something happening?
I was just about to say something as well.
How about now?
Yep.
Yep, that's different.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let me do that again. Did you guys see the FK part of it? Where
No, it was
No.
frozen since break.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so let's try that again. Thank you for telling me, by the way. So I want to get a half hour into it, like, oh, by the way, which has happened. Okay, so forward kinematics. If I want to move the wrist, I got to move the shoulder, and then the elbow, and then I can move the wrist around. So if we're using inverse kinematics, and again, don't just watch, don't follow along with this right now. So I can put a handle on there, and then if I want to move the foot, I can just move the foot around. So this is obviously, or it should be obvious, this is really critical for any kind of walking, because you don't want to have, let's just move the root. So if I move the root, you can see right now the one leg stays in place, the other one doesn't. So if I wanted to keep this leg planted, I would actually have to reverse.
Sorry, it froze.
Froze again. Yeah.
Damn it. Where did it freeze at?
When you were gonna minimize the window or something.
Yeah, when you're about to show one leg moving and one leg not.
Okay, so now I'm sharing my entire screen. So instead of just the window. So you can see I have like Discord open and everything. You're privy to all my secrets now. Okay, so when we move the root, now with the IK handle, this foot stays planted, this one moves. So if we actually wanted to keep it in there, keep it at the same spot, we'd have to try and reverse animate it or counter animate it to be more precise, which clearly nobody actually wants to do. So IK handles can be tricky. And people, a lot of times they have problems with them. They don't know how to handle it. I will show you some of the common issues. what I'd like you to do before we add an IK handle to the left leg, everybody go through, whoops, and make sure that everything is zeroed out. I think because I just deleted the handle. Make sure your legs are in neutral position. It's going to be really critical for the IK handle. This is where, in addition to being in the game engine, if you do have rotation on the joints, this can really cause problems. All right, so everybody ready?
I just found one that wasn't zeroed out, so it'll take a second.
Okay. Make sure it's all set. So we're going to go to skeleton, create IK handle, open up the option box. And where did my option box go?
The other monitor or something?
Maybe.
Could be.
Might be completely off window,
Yeah.
which does happen.
Maya does that all the time.
Hold on, sorry, 1 second.
Is it the one of those tabs at the bottom left?
Oh yeah,
Is it?
these.
Could it be? Ah, yes, thank you.
Yeah,
No,
I had that
knew
happen to
that
me
was a test.
when I was rendering. Like, where's my render view?
Yeah, Maya can be a little bit click happy on that. Okay, so with the option box open, we have two options here. We have single chain and rotate plane. We'll get into single chain more later, but we want rotate plane right now. So, with rotate plane selected, first you want to click on the thigh, then the ankle. So that's going to create a full handle, which you'll see down here. We're going to just call it left IK, left leg IK. And if I move that straight up, you should see the leg more or less bend the way you'd expect it to.
You said it was rotate plane?
Yep.
Okay.
Wait, sorry, Phil, I didn't get that part. Did you select the whole thigh part and then?
No. No. So once again, create a K handle.
Yep.
Just the thigh first, and then the ankle. You're not selecting the knee.
Okay. Let me try that. Wait, so I hit IK handle tool and then what else do I hit? Because I like my joints aren't like pink like yours. Did I miss something?
So did you get the IK handle?
Yeah, I did get that window pop
Okay,
up.
if you move the IK handle, does it move the joints?
Let me try. Oh, so I supposed to get another IK handle in the outliner, you mean?
Yeah, you should have that down here.
Okay.
And again, be able to visually see the IK handle.
Okay, so I didn't get that. I got the window, but it's not showing.
Okay. So again, skeleton, create IK handle.
Yep.
So make sure the option box is set to rotate plane. And first, just single click on the thigh. And then single click on the ankle. If it gives you an error down here, or does nothing.
Oh, okay.
You got it?
Yes, sort of. Like it did change color, but like the knee part and the ankle part isn't turning orangey.
That's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry about that. So one existing glitch that I know of that I think started in my maybe 2017. So typically when we'll see the joints change color when we go through and do skimming. It doesn't do that for everybody. And there appears to be absolutely no rhyme or reason to why it does or doesn't. So if the joints are not necessarily changing color the way they do, say, on my monitor, it's just one of those things. Sorry. It's not that important. It doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of a visual help tool. So not the end of the world.
Yeah.
All right. So does anybody's IK moving weird? All right. Well, sooner or later, somebody's IK is going to move weird, and we will talk about how to fix that when it happens. One thing I do want to mention. So your homework today is going to be, I'm going to give you another model, and essentially you're going to reproduce everything we did in class on the new model. Throughout the course of your homework, if you do wind up with errors that you can't fix and you have to ask about, and you want to ask about them, I don't want you to just stop doing your homework, but what I do want you to do is save out a separate version of the file that has the error on it, and then bring that in so that I can open it up and look at it. Because it's really hard for me to answer questions like, the IK was moving weird. Well, I don't know what to do with that. But if we have the actual file, if I can open it up, go into it, look at the settings, and I can demonstrate how to fix it, that's the way to go on that. So let's say you go through and you're having a problem with the IK. Save out a version of that file that has that error, but go back and try and fix it as well, even if it doesn't go well, or maybe you fix it and you don't know what you did. So it just makes a big difference in terms of demonstrating problems. And that's going to be the big thing. Bring me your questions next week. Everything that went wrong, I want to hear about it. Okay?
Yep.
So we got the IK handle on there. I'm going to do another one for the other leg. Think. And let's go ahead and do a quick save.
If I were to set the IK handle before I did all the mirroring, would it cause any issues?
No, in fact, I'm not a big fan of doing it this way because, again, I've had issues in the past. It will create a new handle.
Okay, cool.
So. All right, everybody good? Okay.
All good here.
All right, so time for a control rig.
My IK handle is showing up.
I'm sorry?
My IK handle is not showing up.
Not showing up in what sense?
Do you see how on the side or in the outliner you have the IK handles?
Okay.
Mine aren't showing up at all.
Okay. So once again, so to create it, again, rotate plane, click thigh, click ankle. If it doesn't show up, that means you're clicking on the wrong thing or you're not quite hitting it. You getting it?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Oh, okay. I see it. I see it now.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so we have to actually start creating a control rig, which means we have to start creating control curves. So if we go up here on the top tab, curve surfaces, one click, we get a nice little circle. Yay. So who's worked with NURBS curves? Okay.
The little?
I'm sorry?
No. I just said the little. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to call this base underscore CTL for control. So can we have things with the same name in the same scene in Maya?
Oh.
Actually, we can. So if I try to just call this base, it's not going to let me. It's going to put a number in front of it. Well, let's say, and again, please just watch right now. If I duplicate it, let's say I drop this in here, and this is going to be my root controller. If I just call it root, is it going to let me do that?
Possibly.
Yes, it will. So now I have two things labeled the same in the same scene. Is that going to be a problem?
I would say no, since they're different things.
Actually, it will, and I'll show you why. So down here, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is the icon to open up your script editor. So stuff that you do here actually, whoops. So if I select this, if I select the mesh, down here you're going to see select -R mesh. If I actually copy this and go to a Mel tab, so these buttons up here run it. This runs it and clears it. This runs it and keeps it. Oops. So if I deselect it and I run this, it selects it. You can actually hack together a script just copying what you get out of there. So if I actually select the root now, so you'll notice it just says mesh. If I select the IK, select -R, the -R is a flag telling it to clear anything that's previously selected. If I do shift select, so it'll add other things. Anyway, if I select the root now, you'll see it says base, and then this is a pipe, for those of you who know your scripting terms. If I select this one, it's going to select base control pipe root. If I get deeper into that, let's say I call this spine. How did I do the notation of that spine? If I get deeper into that, so now it's doing base, pipe, root, pipe, spine 1. So it can get really complex. And what that's going to do is if you have any kind of scripting on there, it's going to screw it up. And once you take it into Unity, that potentially can cause problems too, not so often. But basically, we want everything in here to have a unique name. So you can actually do base, JNT, joint, base, whatever you want in there, but we have to have unique names for all these. So in my case, I do root _ control, spine _ CTL. So now to select it, it's very clean. If I had, say, if I did have root still same name, if I tried to do select root, it's going to throw an error. So if you do have scripted events, which we will eventually, if things have the same name, it's going to cause problems. So if that's a lot, don't worry too much about it right now. Your takeaway should be is everything has to have a unique name. But let's go back to the controls. Right now, I just want to start with the single circle. So if you've ever seen or used a rig, you know that they are not all this dark blue, like the navy blue color on here. So to change the color with it selected, I'm going to go to Control A. It automatically takes me into the shape node. I want to switch it back over to the transform node. So there's two parts to any object in Maya, or not joints, but most of them. So there's the transform that has the translate, rotate, scaling, kind of all the same attributes. If I select the mesh, it's going to look the same. If I go to the shape, this is where it has the components that are unique to this type of object. So if I look at the mesh shape, it's going to be different from the curve shape. We can actually see those, and we'll do this later. If I turn on shapes on display, I can actually go through and see the individual shape nodes. We'll get into that later on. But the important part here is we want to go to the transform, display, drawing overrides, enable overrides, and this is way harder than it should be, by the way. And we can either do color RGB. I'm just going to leave it on index, and I can use the slider. And I'm going to change this to a jaunty yellow. So I'm going to leave that up for a second. You should already have your curve. Please change the color to yellow. And you can do RGB. We can actually use the color picker, which truthfully makes more sense. So, but again, that's under display. Let me see if I can, yep, okay. So it's under display, drawing overrides. You have to enable overrides, and then you can change the color. All right, everybody good? Okay, so as we're doing the controls, we kind of want to think about how they're going to be used and how they should actually look. So one thing I like to do is change the shape of the base just a little bit, just so there's something pointing forward on here, so that I always know which way it's oriented. I always know which way is forward. This is a little bit of a legacy from sort of working in regular animation, because typically we're not going to be using this in Engine. And you're not in, when you animate these, you're not going to be placing these characters at a different spot in the scene or anything like that. But it's just kind of a personal preference. So your mileage may vary. What about in terms of colors? What sort of colors could we use? Is it just going to be all the colors of the rainbow? Like there's no bad color?
Something that's easily seen and consistent.
I wouldn't use
go ahead.
selection colors. I
I'm
wouldn't
sorry,
use
say that again,
navy. Oh, I wouldn't use the selection colors or the navy, so that you actually
Got it. Okay, so what are the selection colors?
green, white.
Right. Green and white are, like I said, so this color green, you don't want to have a control just be that color, because it's going to be visually confusing as far as what you actually have selected. Same thing with white. So if I have multiple objects selected, the ones that are previously selected turn white. We don't want that either. So what else do you think? So black is usually a terrible one because you can't see it very well. Same thing with gray, and gray is actually one for an unselectable object, so you don't really want to use gray.
The navy color for
Yeah, so especially in terms of if you're doing a demo reel, you don't want to leave the curves the default navy blue color because it makes you look lazy. I think it's legit, especially in production, but presentation counts. So what other ones? How about purple?
Could be a little too close. Would it?
Well, so if you have something that's constrained, and we're going to be really getting into constraints. Constrained parent. So if I select that, whatever is constrained to it turns purple.
Oh.
So that's kind of another verboten color on there. So generally speaking, I like to restrict it to yellow, blue, and red. Typically what I will do is everything that kind of goes up the body, so this, root, spine, neck, head, are all going to be yellow. And then the arms will either be blue or red, and then the legs will either be whatever the arms are not. So if the arms are red, the legs will be blue. If the arms are blue, the legs will be red. I've had people do left side red, right side blue, or vice versa. Not my personal preference, but I don't have a problem with it. So I've also had people go, well, I have every color imaginable, so I'm just going to use them all. And that really does not go well. It winds up being very visually confusing, especially once you start animating. So for the time being, I would like you to restrict yourself to those three colors. Okay? So what we want to do next is we want to do the root. So I'm going to make a new curve. I'm going to slide this over here a little bit so I can see it better. This is another one where I'm going to just make it yellow. But I'm going to do one other thing here. I actually want this to be a different shape because I want the root to be easily recognizable and selectable. So I'm going to go into what's basically the construction on this. Instead of 8 sections, I'm going to change it to 16.
Okay.
I'm going to select every other control vert. And just use the scale tool to pull that in. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to snap it to the root. How do I do snap? So if I hold down V, you'll see the manipulator changes from a square to a circle. If I do that and I middle mouse drag it, it will snap to the root joint. I can see everything is perfectly aligned. So if you do want to do a different unique shape, ultimately for the root, that's just fine. But please replicate what I just did for right now, okay?
How did you snap it to the root again?
I held down V.
Okay.
So it actually will snap to points. It'll basically snap to anything. If you have difficulty where it's kind of trying to snap to the mesh as opposed to the joint, just hide the polygons for the moment. And then it'll only be, whoops, it'll only be snapping to the joints. So once again, for those of you who aren't that familiar with curves, to change the shape of it, I'm not going to do the color again, but to change the shape of it, with it selected, we got shapes and inputs. Under inputs, I'm going to go down to sections and change it to 16. If I right click and go to control vert, I now have all the control verts that I want. Personally, I like that shape. You can do that one if you want to. I don't really care that much. Anyway, just something so that it is very unique among the rest of it, because we will be using a number of circles. You do not want everything to be a circle, though. But please get that far.
Phil, was there a specific point you want us to snap it to?
Yes, the root joint.
The root joint? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay. But please ask all questions. Do not apologize for asking questions.
Thank you.
Or else. Okay, everybody good?
Yep.
All right. So another circle. And I'm going to make this one yellow again. So I'm going to make this spine 1 control. And I'm going to move this up to the spine. Spine 1, snap it there. Control D. Snap that to spine 2. That's up to spine 3. And unfortunately, in this case, I got to go back. By the way, you don't actually have to type in the underscores when you're renaming something. It'll put them in there automatically. So please get that far. I'm sorry, to snap, it's the V button. V key. So how do we like the look of those control curves? Aesthetically speaking, what do you think?
It's kind of messy. Like there's so many things going on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's limits to how much we actually can do about that. There are those who like to do kind of the controls sticking out the back.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got kind of like a single line and then a circle attached to it. I will be showing you how to do that. So what I'm going to do on these, I'm going to kind of reduce the size of these a bit so they kind of conform to the body a little bit more, but not intersecting with the body, especially up top. So yeah, I like that already. It's a little bit cleaner. So how it looks does actually matter. We are making something that's very utilitarian on one hand, but if you just have all this visual clutter on there, if all the controls are too big, if they're not properly scaled, it makes it a little bit more stressful to look at.
Mhm.
So we got to move on to the arm. So first of all, let's make the clavicle control. Now, we're going to cheat this just a little bit today. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the curves and I'm going to distort it so it works for the clavicle. We're eventually going to make compound shapes for this, and we will do that with the next rig we do. So this is the one and only time I ever want to see a control like this, okay? So I'm going to take this one, spine 3, duplicate it, call this left clav, CTL. I'm going to, whoops, map that to a clavicle. And then I'm just going to use the scaling tool to change the shape. And then I'm just going to grab some of the control verts. Whoops. I've got a little bit of this paddle shape on there. I'm going to take, oops. So yeah, so go ahead and make this shape, but please, I never, ever, 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 ever want to see it again outside of this first, the first rigs that we're doing on here. I'm also going to change the color on that. I think we will do blue. Let's do blue for the arm, and then we'll do red for the legs. Everybody good? All right.
Good question.
Yes.
So we're making that blue shape right there for the clavicle? Yes?
Yes.
And secondly, are we going to be making an IK for the arm?
For the moment, no.
Okay.
IK is certainly part of the arm and with most rigs, and you have a switching system. But for the time being, we're only going to have it on the legs.
Okay.
So, all right. So, so number one, why do I have this shape for the clavicle? In terms of animation.
Taking a wild guess.
Okay.
I guess it kind of shows the rotation this way, but
So-
I'm not too sure why you need this way.
Why you need like up and down?
Yeah.
So yeah, you rarely need this. So it's usually here and here, both of which you can see very distinctly. On top of that, I can select it from the front and I can select it from the back. So if it's only one way, like if I'm kind of like, oh, I'm working on here, oh, I got to go back over here and then back and forth, it just makes for a nicer workflow. It may seem like kind of a very fussy nuance, but it matters. So for the clavicle there, I'm going to go ahead and go back to spine 3 because I want the shoulder to just be a circle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And snap it to the shoulder. And I'm going to shrink it down. And make it that nice jaunty blue. Once I have, oops, so get to, I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to skip the elbow for the moment. I'm going to take this down. I'm going to make this the wrist controller as well. Just shrink that down a little bit. Okay, everybody good?
Yep.
All right. Let's go ahead and do the elbow. In fact, I can just, we'll continue with the wrist. So I'm going to move this up to the elbow. And I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to take the, I'm going to zero out that 90 degrees so it's flat. I'm going to do one other thing on here, and this, and you can just watch for the moment. I'm going to kind of flatten this out and kind of turn it into this D shape. And there's a reason for that. So why would I have it be like a D shape on there?
It's like a hinge.
Well, did you say it's like a hinge?
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of give it that sort of sense on there so that I can always tell, I can visually look at the control and see the rotation as well too. If I just do a circle, visually speaking, this doesn't work quite as well. If I'm actually rotating gives me a little bit more of a sense of where the elbow is. And again, this may seem like kind of nitpicking. And I will freely admit to some extent there is a personal preference part of it there. But if you do speak to animators, and you will have to when you're doing rigs, most of them do like some sort of visual sense of where the controls are actually at. Circles can work just fine. I don't have a big problem with using circles for, say, like the shoulder, spine, wrist, even the neck. But once you actually but with certain joints, it just helps to really be able to tell exactly how much it's rotated.
For the shoulder and stuff, do we rotate with the rotate or the rotate axis?
Where are you seeing rotate axis and where are the...
Oh, I'm just looking at the transform attribute.
Okay, so it should just be under rotate.
Okay.
Okay, so we got a bunch of controls on here right now. So visually speaking, if you look at the shoulder, elbow, and wrist, there should be a certain aspect to those control curves that you don't like. So looking at those, what don't you like?
They aren't in line with the joint.
Right. So this brings up some very important concepts, and I'm going to introduce these and show you how to use it, and then we are pretty much going to call it a day because I don't want to overreach on the first day on this. So within all these controls, if I click through them right now, so the base is clean. There's no transformation, no rotation. It's pretty much the only one that's actually clean, especially the scaling. So every single control has to look like this. Zeroed out on translation, rotation. Scaling should be at 1. One thing that is going to happen when you turn in your rigs, and I grade them, and I'll be doing this in front of you, the first thing I do is I turn off selecting joints and selecting mesh. I will lasso, and actually we got to hide the IK handles because stupid. Anyway, I actually lasso select all of your curves, and I go through and zero them out. And what should happen is, and I'll do the same thing for the scaling, and what should happen is your rig should not move. So that is a sneak preview of how this is going to work. So these all have to be completely clean before we do anything else on them. So number one, and I'm going to go ahead and do it on these. We only have one side right now. We would actually have to do this on both sides. So I'm going to go to modify, freeze transfer. I'm sorry?
No. I was just guessing you're going to freeze transformation. Sorry.
Yep. Modify, freeze transformations, translate rotation and scale, apply. So now all of these are completely clean. Now, we do want, let me close this. We do want the shoulder, elbow, wrist, anything that has alignment on it to follow. But it still has to say zeroed out. So what I actually want the control to be is kind of like with the joints. I want it to follow along. Excuse me, and especially the elbow. I think the air is really getting to me. But with both of these, I've got it rotated. Now they follow, but now I have information on the rotate. But if I go through and freeze it again, that changes the manipulator. And again, this is what we don't want. In fact, this is actually worse because now we have this control curve and it's actually offset relative to the manipulator. We never ever want this. So what we're actually going to do, So we want to keep these in their neutral position, completely horizontal or vertical, depending on how you look at it. And what I'm going to do, we'll start with the wrist action, or I'm sorry, we'll start with, oops. We'll do this with the elbow. Actually, I take it back. Let's do it with the shoulder. I'm going to hit Control G. And actually, I take it back. We're going to group it. I'm going to do the option box first so that the group pivot is center. I don't want it, if I have it on origin, it'll actually put the pivot point for the group down here. We do not want that. Once I have this in a group, with the group selected, I can even get the information from the joint. Oops. I can get the information from the joint if I want to. I'm going to set that for the group's rotation. So now the group has the rotation information on it. If I select the shoulder controller, it's clean and it's aligned properly because it's inheriting those transforms from the group. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Liars. Everybody screws this up. So it will take some getting used to on there. So I want to, once again, I kind of want to take a quick look at this here. So instead of a group, I'm going to create a locator, which I'll create locator. So locator is just kind of a null sort of object. It actually won't really show up in anything. We'll be using them later. Where it becomes useful is you can actually see, you can kind of visually see it. So I'm going to create, I'm just going to create a cube. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. So you'll notice here, number one, I'm not going to freeze transformations on this. It's the locator and the cube are in the exact same position. The cube has some scaling on it that doesn't really matter for what we're talking about right now. If I actually make the cube a child of the locator, the cube, except for this little, I don't know why you get -0, it's very fine. But now I can move the locator. The cube's transform is relative to the locator now because it's a child of that object, so it stays zeroed out, unless I actually grab the cube and move it. But it's still going to follow it. So if this is at, let's just make it a nice round number of 2 along the x-axis. If I actually take it out of hierarchy, it's going to change all those numbers because now it's in world space, so its actual location is going to read as different. Same thing happens with rotation. So if I rotate this, oops, if I rotate the locator, no matter which way I rotate it, no matter how much, unless I actually go through and rotate the cube, it's going to be different. So, so if I have this zeroed out, once again, if I actually take this out of hierarchy, now it's going to be rotated relative to the world, so those numbers are going to change. So if this seems like a lot, you're kind of getting a little overwhelmed, don't worry too much about that. We will be dealing with this throughout the semester. I promise it will become more and more clear as time goes on. So with the shoulder, we've got that properly aligned. Elbow, I can do the same thing. So I already did the option box here with setting the pivot where I want to be. So now I just have to hit Control G for group, Control G for group. I can actually, once again, grab whatever numbers I have on the elbow. Why did that work properly? Well, regardless. So, whoops. Actually, I'm just going to eyeball it. So now we have that. This should still be zeroed out. The group is properly aligned. The control is properly aligned. The control is still clean. So I'm going to do the same. Whoops. Let's do. I'm going to do the same thing with the wrist. Control G, group. And on the group, just align that. Again, completely clean. The manipulator is nicely aligned. So please go through. So do that right now on at least one of your controls. Once again, the important part is that the manipulator aligns properly with the direction we want the control to go in, but the control is completely clean in terms of transformation and rotation. So just tell you what, let's start with the shoulder. Just go ahead and do that on your shoulder. And actually, while you are doing that, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to put the homework model up on the discussion area. And by the way, thank you. It's lovely to see everybody here on the first day. I will be the envy of my fellow faculty. And yes, it's similar to Parent, Transform, and Unity. A little bit different, though, at the same time. But same kind of concept.
To reiterate why we have to group the controllers
Say that
individually.
again?
Could you repeat why we have to group the controllers?
Sure. So give me 1 second just to post the homework model, and then I'll go over that again. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so while it's thinking about uploading. So the reason we use groups on here, so I'll take the shoulder, I'll redo the shoulder. So with the shoulder, we want this to follow the arm. So we want this to actually be there so the manipulator, especially the y-axis, follows the arm all the way down, right? The problem is the controls still have to be zeroed out, and right now we have rotational information on the control. If I freeze it, that screws up the manipulator. And like I said, this is actually even worse. So the solution there is to group it. Now, not the control, but the group. Now I can change the alignment. So I'm adding rotational information to the group, but if I select the actual control, the control is clean. And with the control, it follows exactly the way I want it to. And that has to do with how objects in a hierarchy inherit their transformations. So, does that help?
Yeah, makes
Okay.
sense.
May I ask a silly question? How do
Yeah.
you? What's the shortcut for making a group?
Control G.
Control G. Thank you.
Not a silly question. Quit apologizing for your questions. Once again, Maya is it's a great program, but it is really complicated. And I actually remember what it was like to learn Maya and how frustrating it could be. So please ask me anything on that.
Yep. Thank you so much, Bill.
All right, so we're just about out of time. The homework model is posted in the discussion area. It should be. Let me see if we can finish. Yes, it's there. So what I want you to do is get as far with that model as we got today in class. Save what you have today because we will continue with this model and this rig next time. Okay? And we will continue building on this one, and essentially for the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to go over everything in class, and then what we do in class, you're going to reproduce for homework. Okay?
There's the homework model. There's no file connected to the.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hold on.
It just says homework models get them while they're hot, and there's no links.
Oh.
They ran out. We should have got here earlier.
Yep. You know.
Sorry, try it
I haven't
now.
taken that coffee break.
So refresh it. It should be up there now.
Yep, there it is. Awesome.
Yep. There they are. Nice.
So once again, let me know if you have questions. In fact, you know what? I think so I do have office hours, but you are also welcome. I'm going to make a new thread for questions. And I'm just going to open this one up for the whole semester. So when you do, if you do want to post a question here, do me a favor and tag me on it. And when I post an answer, I'll tag you back. If it's, well, we'll see. Well, I actually haven't done it this way yet, but we'll see how everything works out on there. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can, especially towards the end of the week. Things get kind of busy. Like Thursdays are kind of cray-cray for me. but yeah, especially if I see a lot of people have a similar question, I might post a video or something like that. I may also do, if you do have something that you'd like to see covered in class, post it there as well. It helps me out if you do have a question because I can prep demos. It just goes a lot better if I'm not doing it necessarily on the fly. So, but other than that, once again, make sure that you have this saved. I will hang out for a few minutes if anybody else has questions or if anybody has questions. But beyond that, you are free to go. Thank you for a good first day, and I will see everybody next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
The,
Phil.
the homework was pretty much just get to this point.
Yep.
On the provided model, yeah.
Yep. Basically, we're just, so there's going to be a lot of repetition.
Let's
So,
put on some music.
yep.
Are we asked to make all the controllers for the other joints too?
Please, again, everything we did today, please do on the model. So joints, IK, as far as we got today with the controllers.
Okay.
Okay, see you.
All right.
Thank you for class.
All right, have a good one, you guys.
Take care.
Everybody survived the apocalyptic orange.
Yeah, it's
was
almost like a little bit of dawn now, not noon.
Yeah.
I still see a whole lot
It's
of orange.
Still pretty bad.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
What-
yours is a whole lot more yellow than mine.
Dude, it is so bad in downtown. And, like, what's on camera, it is so much of a darker orange actually outside. Like,
Oh,
it's
I believe it.
bad.
Holy shamoly.
Like, it almost looks like some Mad Max shit outside right now.
Yeah, close your window.
Like, it's insane. Alright, have a good one, you guys.
You too.
Stay safe.
Okay, I have a question about the curve. When I try to shape it, it won't let me like select one vertex. It only it does all of them.
Really? Oh, you know what? Okay, so let me share my screen again. So that is actually, you got to give me a minute to remember where this setting actually is.
Yeah, that's okay.
I think this is under. God, I hate this because this is something that Maya does every so often, but it doesn't happen so often that I remember where it is each time. It's just a really stupid.
Must have been moved.
I think it's
from
under
one of the weeklies.
move. Don't hold. Oh, let me find it and then I'll. Okay, here it is. So if you go to Windows, wait, modified. I'm sorry, transform tools. Go to the option box on the move tool. If you go down to soft selection, you probably have soft select checked.
Did you accidentally hit B at one point?
What's that?
No, I was asking
Probably, I don't know.
Michael, yeah. Because B is the soft select button.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that, so I actually did that. But if you uncheck that, so if that's checked, like let's say if you're doing it on mesh, that's not doing it now, but thank you for ruining my demo, stupid Maya. But it will select more. It'll select like not only that vert, but the surrounding ones as well. And that's probably what's happening on there.
Can you show how to get to the tool settings again one more time?
Sure. Modify. Oops. Modify. Transform tools. Move tool. And then option box.
That pops.
What's that?
For some reason, that didn't pop up, the tool settings.
Is it still doing it?
Okay, hold on. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay. Okay, fixed. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Nice.
Does May or somebody else have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I did the like copying the joints rotation onto
Okay.
the group rotation, it like shifts the curve
You
somewhere
know,
else.
that's kind of my mistake on there. So we'll get into this more next time. But on the joints, come on. There we go. So what you actually have, I forget my own tools sometimes. So when you actually parent these, it's going to change how it's aligned because it's all going to be aligned relative to these others, so these numbers don't change. This is the one you actually need.
Yeah,
So
that was confusing.
yeah, sorry about that. What I would say so when we make these tools, and happens in the 309 class, we start making rigging tools to kind of automate these processes. So the way we do it is you'll make a tool that will go through and get the actual global joint orient information, which is what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And then that will apply that to the group on there, so it automatically aligns with that. And I think I just got my process confused on there, so I apologize for confusing you a bit on that. What I would say was for today, just eyeball it. Just
Okay.
rotate the group. Just rotate it manually. It should be. It doesn't have if you're half a degree off, it really doesn't matter. Ultimately, all that really matters is going to be the controllers. The joint orientation part of it is a little bit of kind of a legacy from before we actually animated with control rigs. It used to be you just have the joints in there. So you would actually have to have the joints aligned properly, but also have them zeroed out at the same time, kind of like what we're doing with the controllers. So that's where the joint orientation comes in. You could probably get rid of that, but it would break like every rig that's been done forever. Like it would almost be like doing a completely new program, a completely new Maya program. But in addition to that, it does actually matter. Having proper alignment like that does actually matter when you take it into the game engine. Again, kind of a legacy thing. That's just what they have to work with. And it can cause animation problems if the animation is too off. Like if this was not oriented at all, but we still had the control oriented, it'll work. You can animate with it that way. It's great. And you can dump it in the game engine, but you're going to wind up with weird like gimbal locks, or it's going to rotate, like instead of rotating here, it's going to like rotate there into that position. And you have to go through, you have to open it up in Maya again, clean up the animation curves, and export it again. So good height. This is basically just good hygiene, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
sure.
I see.
I had two brief questions.
Sure.
One was just, so is the elbow controller supposed to be like parallel to the arm from the backside?
Yeah. So you want.
Okay.
Attach that. But yeah, because what we really want when you rotate this, and I'll just do a quick constraint on there, is when you rotate it along the y-axis, you want it to rotate
Oh,
to
okay.
the elbow would. Like I said, you don't want to have, like if he's down like this, you don't want to have to go like, you don't want to have to do two moves to put the basically, like if you rotate it completely, it's sticking your thumb in your shoulder. And you want that to be one move. You don't want it to be two or more.
Gotcha.
So,
Thank you. And the second question was, are all of the spine nodes just straight up and down?
for this one, yes. And that's going to be fairly typical, but that can change.
And is there any sort of like curve to them, or is it just straight up and down, or like from between the different nodes themselves?
You mean like here, here, and here?
Yeah, like both
So,
transform
like I
and
said, in
orientation.
this particular case, it's going to be straight.
Okay.
But with other creatures, let me see if I actually have one handy. I can demonstrate that. Let me save this guy again. Let me see. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of. See if I've still got my ogre here somewhere. Yeah, this isn't a bad example. Here, I'll show you. So this is one for the class, yeah. So if you look at this guy, he there's kind of this curve on here, so there's definitely more of a curve to the shape of the joints. It's kind of straight, and then it comes up here and curve. I can't find the one that I'm really looking for, but this would be the example of one where you would have a bit of, like, they'd be curved as opposed to just straight up and down.
Okay.
So, but typically with bipeds, usually straight up and down works just fine.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. That's all my questions.
All right.
I have an extra question.
Shoot, let's hear it.
So when I create the group for the control, it goes into the center of the world instead of where the control was.
That's in the settings. When you use the group function, there's an option for group pivot. You can click center instead of origin.
Right.
And
so
that'll set it. Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. So if you go to edit and then group and open up the option box, yours is going to be on origin. You want to change that to center. And once you change it, it stays that way until you change it back. So then you can use the keyboard shortcut after that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Phil, so just something about assignment. So you said the assignment is just to make the puppet to this point, right? Or do we need to like finish the other parts, like the right side and like the head part?
I only want you to go as far as we got today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure. So thank you so much, Phil.
Sure.
See you next week.
See you then.
Bye.